Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Lindsay, the housewife historian, and today we're going to be talking about NeNe Leakes and her interview with the famous Carlos King, producer from the Real Housewives of New Jersey, as well as the the Real Housewives of Atlanta. Before I get into all of that, guys, I'm not going to play my premiere. I just want to let you guys know that everything in this video is, of course, alleged and for entertainment purposes only. Please make sure that you like my video. It helps get it out into circulation, the algorithm, and it's just a great free way to support my channel. And also check out my podcast on Wednesdays, NYC Gal Out. She has her podcast and she hosts me every Wednesday. So we're always chit chatting. And if you are curious about any of my advocacy or prison reform, you can find that on my website, www.lindsayco.com. So check that out and let's get into this. So Carlos King basically broke the internet today by interviewing NeNe Leakes, who is trending nationwide. She's trending on Twitter. She's trending nationwide. She did a great interview, and he asked a lot of questions that I think the audience and viewers were really interested in hearing her responses to. And I'm going to talk to you about some of those. So first of all, if you don't know who Carlos King is, he was a big time producer with Bravo. Okay. He was there from the beginning though. He started out in the Real Housewives of New Jersey, and he was producer to Teresa Giudice and the famous Danielle Staub. He was also producer to Teresa when she flipped the table, which is initially what put the Real Housewives of New Jersey on the map. From there, he went to Atlanta, and he is named as producer on some of the best episodes, best named seasons of the Real Housewives of Atlanta ever. Unfortunately, Bravo and Carlos King parted ways after the episode. It was also Phaedra's last season when Phaedra parted ways. The allegations that pertain to Candy and Todd about the dungeon and using pharmaceuticals to in a way that would allow them to essay. It was in crazy accusations. And so I think as a result of that, they felt like Carlos had allegedly told Phaedra, and Phaedra had told Portia, and Portia had then said something to Candy. But Portia felt like she was off the hook because she had confirmed with Phaedra that Phaedra had heard it from a source, ear to ear, and Phaedra really kind of backtracked on that. But behind the scenes, behind the fourth wall, it was alleged that Carlos had actually told Phaedra, and that's how the whole thing had gotten started, and that's why Bravo and Carlos King ended up separating ways. Now, Carlos King has not put his producer days behind him just for his podcast. He's still out there producing, and his most recent endeavor was Real Marriage Huntsville. And if you don't know, Real Housewives of Potomac, Monique and Chris Samuels were actually featured in the last 2 seasons. And again, she started out originally as a Real Housewives of Potomac housewife. And after several seasons and an altercation with Candace Dillard Bassett, her and Chris and Bravo parted ways, and they ended up on the show being produced by Carlos King. So Carlos King's taking quite a trip down memory lane by having NeNe Leakes on his podcast, again, because they were there with each other from the beginning. So they have a rapport that we're not going to see him have with a lot of people or her have from a lot of people, especially as it pertains to the industry. I'm sure in the last 15 years, there's been a lot of people that have came and went as it pertains to the legalities going on behind the scenes. So he does a great job of asking her questions about what her salary was like her first season, what it was like for them as in like status in the community and going places. And I want to point out one thing I did notice, that anytime money was brought up in a way that Bravo was not put in a good light by NeNe. For example, she claims that she made $10,000 her first year as a housewife. Or was it that they made nothing the first year, and the second year she made 10,000, and then they got together and got a contract, and all of the ladies were making the same amount? Regardless, Carlos King does not comment, and he literally changes the subject. Then she mentions that all of the parties and events that were thrown during season 1 and season 2 were paid out of pocket, not by production. And again, Carlos King avoids responding, avoids asking a follow-up question, and he changes the direction. And I'm sure that she's aware that what he's doing, and he is aware of what she is doing, right? They just What's understood doesn't need to be said. So I'm not quite sure what Carlos King's relationship is with Bravo, or what he would be trying to salvage as it pertains to speaking about how the housewives were probably treated poorly and underpaid in the beginning. I don't know. Regardless, they were still able to go on and really give us a great interview. She talked about Greg. She talked about, this was another thing I really loved and respect about the interview, that they touched on. They touched on the fact that when NeNe started to make her own money and she started to make more money than Greg, it became a problem. And she wasn't even in tune enough, maybe with Greg, as she should have been, to know that that was a problem. And in her mind, and I know I've thought like this before, things in the house that the man generally would be on his to-do list, I take care of or have somebody else take care of because I feel like I'm taking it off of his plate. But in his mind, it's a way of demasculating him because that's like his contribution. It's something that he can do that I can't do, right? And so she says that she thought there was a lot of that going on. And she was very humble when he said, like, do you think, we see these women, they start making more money and then they're a boss. All you hear about is how they're a boss, they're this, they're that. And NeNe was like, again, I think maybe I wasn't as aware of what I was doing. And I know there were times I demasculated him in front of the camera when I shouldn't have. And she took responsibility for it. She took accountability for it. She was very humble about it. I don't think that conversation would have went the same way with other housewives if we would have discussed situations where they could have been a little bit more humble or mindful of their partner. She also talks about, again, loving this. She talks about her son who was recently arrested. I think he's been in jail for 20 some days now. And allegedly, he's dealing with addiction issues. He's had issues for years now. Excuse me. I was not aware of his issues with drugs. I remember him being in trouble a little bit, but I didn't realize the extent. And not Andy, I'm so sorry. Carlos does a great job of saying, like, do you think that the show contributed to that? And she names off all the people who are addicts in her family. And first of all, loving the fact that taking ownership here, like, people want to say, oh, it's not genetics, oh, that's an excuse, but here's the reality. If you have a grandfather, a first cousin, an aunt, a brother, a mother, or a father, if you have all these people that are in your bloodline that are suffering with addiction issues, there's got to be a connection somewhere. So whether it makes you more prone to being one or it actually makes you one, I don't know. I'm just saying that it seems as if the probability, if you have addicts around you in your bloodline, you could be potentially more likely to become an addict than someone who doesn't. So that is a reality. And she names off, like, I think she says an aunt and a cousin. She named off 4 people, I think, within her family that suffer from addiction. That doesn't mean they're in their active addiction now. They could be in recovery, they could be sober today, but there was a time when they were dealing with addiction. So it sounds like he's been to rehab a couple of times as well, and they were not successful. And she sounded very AA textbook, but it is the truth. And that was, she's accepted the fact that the several times before when she sent him to rehab, it was her sending him, like, you need to get your life together, you need to da 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 da. And so when she did that, it didn't really do anything because he wasn't ready. And so an addict can't get better until they're sick and tired of being sick and tired, right? So she does recognize that. And she also, again, when Carlos King asked her, is there anything that could have been done different? Do you think that the cameras affected him? And she says that one time on camera she disciplined him, and she wished that she had never done that because she felt so badly about it because of the fact that they were put out into the spotlight. They were put out there to be subject to be taken apart and criticized, and they were just young boys at the time, and it was really her job that was putting them in that situation. But she owned it and she apologized for it, and again, totally humble about it. Then Carlos King says do you ever hear from John? If you remember, she dated John. He was the one that bought her the Rolex, and she was like, "Actually, so funny that you say that. I just heard from him because he reached out to me when he heard about my son getting arrested, and he said, I will pay for your son and take him and put him in the best facility in upstate New York. I will take care of everything." And she was like, and also, I want to say that Lamar Odom reached out and also said that he would like to take Bryson and take him out to California and work his program of recovery and go to his rehab out there. And so I thought, for me, in my opinion, that really contest to the kind of person that NeNe must be in real life, to have two different people reach out and say, we want to help your son, is significant, I think. Because she doesn't say, longtime Bravo executive called me and was worried about Brayson and said they would foot the bill. We know how they treated, and don't anyone say it's because she tried to sue them, because look at how they treated Brandy Glanville, which she could have had issues with alcohol and drugs. I'm not being mean when I say that. You guys know what I'm saying. Look at Kim Richards. They weren't, I think they offered for her to go to rehab. Maybe they paid for like 60 or 90 days or something. I don't know. But they've never been one to be like, yes, go to rehab. They're like, no, you don't need to, go to rehab. Come over and film. We're going to drink from morning, noon, evening, lunch, dinner. I mean, Luann, Gina. I mean, the list is endless. So, Bravo is great for serving alcohol 24/7 and not really giving mind to the women. And we hear about them sometimes even doing extracurricular recreational things after cameras go down. So anyways, guys, back to what I'm saying is, she's had two different strong men who have resources and the means and the money to take her son and put him through a rehab program and help him get back on his feet. So hopefully that's what happens. If he's been in the county jail for 20 some days, and he's likely probably starting to come out of his detox from any of the substances that he may have been taking, and the longer that he is in there not using, the clearer the thinking becomes. The fog starts to lift, right? The reasonable thinking starts to slowly make its way back. So really, he has one hard decision. All he has to do is make one hard decision, and that's just to say yes. And he could change his whole life. He has a really great opportunity. But again, loving NeNe Leakes coming on his podcast, being humble, talking about her son's addiction, talking about if the show affected him. Also, she spoke about the women. I think that they always kind of tried to make her the outsider. Like, she said at the beginning, I can't exactly quote how she said it, but she said after a couple weeks of filming, she went home to Greg and was like, listen, I have to 100% be myself at all times. So this is like never, ever, ever going to work. And she was like, it just felt like the other ladies, they had, different things that worked for them. And I could tell that they thought that the audience was going to love them and hate me. And she kind of uses Sheree's party, where NeNe was left off of the list, as the first example of something like that happening. I didn't realize there was such bad blood between the two of them, as in Cynthia and NeNe. Cynthia, wow, if she's fooling us, she's damn good. Seriously, she's damn good if she's fooling us, because NeNe really is adamant that Cynthia was coming for her bag, and that she had people in production and cast coming for NeNe's bag as well. And she said that she's privy to a lot of things that happened that Cynthia is unaware that she knows, and that just because she would never be friends with Cynthia or never like really forgive her, she would work with her. Okay. I guess that's progress. It's progress, not perfection, right, guys? So that's what we have with the Carlos King interview, NeNe Leakes. I think there's going to be a second half coming in, so you guys will have to make sure that you tune in for that, and we will chat soon, guys. Oh, make sure that you like and hit the comment.